poet under a soldier's hat. Poet, because that is what he should have been. Soldier's hat, that is what he was obliged to wear. So I was born in India and emigrated from England to the US on the last day of '85 to begin my new life with the new year. And I used to frequent the flea market, and there I picked up a statue, an Indian brass statue, without knowing its identity or of its connection to me. And in fact, it turns out that she is the warrior queen, one of India's heroines, the Jhansi Rani. And unfortunately, I have to say I'm slightly embarrassed that it was one of my ancestors who captured her and she was put to death. So not a good thing to say if you visit India. Anyway, so 17 years ago, my father handed me a typewritten autobiography. And of course, it got pushed to the back of a cupboard where it remained for many a year. And about 6 years ago, I took it out and realized that the material embedded within it was too valuable not to be shared. So an idea dawned. By using the lives of one man, my father, and one family, my ancestors, I could get a wonderful scope of 100 years of colonial history of the British Raj from the 1840s up to 1947 partition. We've all heard of the Raj, we've seen the films, we've read the books. But do we know what the Raj is? Who is the Raj? What are the people? Why did they go to India and leave England? Of course, there are many reasons. And what were their experiences, their thoughts, and their impressions, their interactions, and what were the historical events that they experienced? So touching on them, people, events, places we've only perhaps heard, like Lord Kitchener, Gandhi, Alexander the Great, the Northwest Frontier, Peshawar, Abbottabad, the Khyber Pass, tribal warlords, the Indian Mutiny, the Week of the Long Knives, and partition. I could go on forever. But there I had it, the framework for this book. So my great-grandfather, Sam Knowles, for example, he went to India to escape the label round his neck, bastard son of criminals. So he took the Queen's shilling, which meant that he was indentured as a soldier for 7 years and was shipped off to India. Eventually, he was freed and married my great-grandmother and had a child, and then got caught up in the Indian Mutiny. So I'm just going to read a short excerpt as my father is traveling on a ship to India for his first voyage, aged 19, and he's got a bundle of papers on his lap. I looked at the next bundle in my lap, neatly tied with blue ribbon. It contained grandfather's personal account of the outbreak of the Indian Mutiny, the very day, the very hour. I pulled the bow, took out its precious handwritten pages to read my grandfather's compelling eyewitness account. That fatal Sunday on May the 10th, 1857, woke us to one of the hottest days in our remembrance. It seemed too hot for the doves to coo, the crows, the starlings to wrangle, or the monkeys to chatter. The Sadar Bazaar at our back and the native lines in our front seemed as still as the graveyards, while the dust-laden air outside remained as calm and as quiet as when preceding a mighty storm or earthquake. We were dressing for church service when we heard firing from the 20th lines, and our water carrier rushed in saying that the 3rd Cavalry had broken from their quarters, primed with native drugs and liquor, some on the bare backs of their horses, like so many demons brandishing their sabres and crying, "Religion, religion, kill all the English pigs." And the water carrier fell to his knees and said, I have eaten your salt and cannot betray you. For God's sake, sir, take the Mem Sahib and children and child and fly for your lives to the British lines. I'm skipping the rest, so you have to discover his escape for yourselves, and end it with his last line, which is, at midnight, our precious boy passed away from his mother's loving arms to rest forever in his great Redeemer's bosom. My hand holding the account dropped to my lap. Saddened by the enormity of such a tragedy, my eyes escaped into infinity along the lengthening shadows between the dunes beyond the canal's reddening waters in the sunset. Though 70 years had passed, I felt my grandparents' pain. So that was his experience. And then his wife, my great-grandmother, Isabella, she was born in India, was native to India, and born to an English captain and his Indian wife. And because of that lack of status, and in order to claim the status as British, she was married off at 17 to a man of 86. Thank God the marriage was childless. And she was widowed 7 years later. But it was anything to escape the label Chi-Chi, Eurasian, which was foisted on the people by the Victorian wives when they descended on India. And Isabella, she fell pregnant 21 times, had 14 live births, 7 of which lived. My grandmother, Hugh's mother Emma, being one. And she was born in the ruins of a Hindu temple in the jungle. And wild as a girl, Emma was also married off in a suitable match. And I won't divulge her naughtiness, the result of her adulterous affair, her startling behaviour, but I was quite shocked. I didn't know they got up to those tricks in those days. But as to my father, unqualified for much else because of his poor academic achievements, thanks to his pillar-to-post upbringing, Hugh's father pushed him to follow family tradition. Army officer training school at Sandhurst, his father's regiment, off to India. But of course he came to love India, the land and its people, but not the army. The army's too tight straitjacket. So I can pick up with him slowly drifting through the Suez Canal on that first trip, questioning. The heat more tolerable on the shade side, I found a vacant deck chair and dragged it aft to distance myself from a group of chattering men. I wanted silence. I wanted to enjoy the emptiness alone. The relentless sun, suffocating air, and slight rocking of the ship lulled me near comatose. I moved only to keep my chair in the ever-shifting strip of shade or lift a glass of lime water to my lips. Foggy, I drifted in and out of wakefulness, wandered paths chosen by my mind. Reality far away, I rode the backs of elephants, confronted fierce tigers, cooled in marble palaces and temples, and skied the Himalayan snows. Ceaselessly pressing onward, caught in dream's tide, I walked, face upturned into hydrating rain. The desert frog within me stirred. With a jolt, I plummeted back, uneasy. I was a fraud. What the hell was I doing on this ship headed to India? For that matter, why was I in the army at all? Certainly not for the glory of military action. I ranted on inside my head, searching for answers. Perhaps the army was all I was good for. Perhaps I really was the weakling father thought me. I resumed my self-inquiry. Too late now, Hugh, what's done is done. You don't have to stay a soldier. Transfer to a specialist department. Develop your own career. Make the army your instrument, your vehicle. Meanwhile, enjoy your all-expenses-paid adventure and see the world. I sat up confident, determined. Though it might be my destiny to step into my ancestors' shoes, my rose footprint would be unique.